So I went to front the workshops and a few things I've learned and how I've implemented them. Um, this comes in a two-parter. First part is going to be about what I learned. It's basically one of the talks I went to. We did press quite a bit, so that's that. Second part is my opinion on how to implement the things that I've learned over the years, because oftentimes it's a lot to take in. And so, part one, I'm going to do a quick run through of all the things that we did while we were there, a few of the things that I picked up along the way.
Sure. I don't know what the Front Conference is. What is that?
Oh, Front Conference is a conference for product managers and UX designers, user researchers, and just leadership mentoring. So we go there, there's a lot of workshops that we go through while we're there that teach us hands-on skills to actually implement a product management UX work and such work.
Where was it?
It was at the local the library in South Georgia. The big one with the big park in front of it. Yeah. It was a really fun experience. I learned a lot there. So a few of the workshops that I did go to were people's. Gibson Bill. He does a lot of the product leadership for places like Chegg. He designed the product in Netflix. And then Laura Hahn, she's Priceline, head of design. She was mapping her organization to expose the gaps in communication. Thor Ernston, he was the lead architect at Zynga when they had put together Farm Bill and Frontier Bill, and so he went over a little bit of how we should validate our ideas with the smallest possible test. And then Drew Bradwell, he's in Vision Consulting, so clients of Envision, and teaches them how to use design systems, how to implement anything necessarily, what value you bring to them. Raina Wiles, she's done a lot of research with Stanford, and she used to work at Frog. Names that businesses that have been kind of leadership, or thought leadership in design thinking. So she was teaching methodologies for different types of research facilitation. For Gibson's talk, he has a lot of frameworks, a lot of ways to break down ideas to get everyone in alignment and have a direction of the group. So he went over the GLEE model, which is it's the spearhead for your roadmap. It's deciding on what you get big, what are you going to lead in, and then how do you expand from there. It starts to define what your product roadmap in the long run is. The GEM model is alignment. It's usually your executive team. They're kind of split on these different ideas of growth, engagement, and monetization, where they want to grow at the current time. And so you have to get all those executives in the room and make a decision on what kind of growth they want to have. DHM is how do we delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. What this does is it defines positioning for the company. It can be the very top of the tower on one item. Let's do that. So who are we specifically, and how are we going to communicate that? And then how to set the metrics. It was like SMT, I'm going off of that, but it's a breakdown of what are our OKRs that define our strategy. From our OKRs, what kind of KPIs do we want to put in there, and then what kind of tactics do we want to do to get to the point of building those KPIs so we can meet that strategy. It's breaking it down top to bottom of what things that we can do over time. Laura Hahn, she was doing workshops on how to map your organization. Oftentimes we understand our organizations because we have an organizational chart, but realistically there's always the actual organizational chart, which is the social contract that we make with one another. when we do that, we start to realize where the connections actually are, start to form gap analysis, and we can start to understand what our organization actually looks like and where we can make real improvements in those analysis. Thor was very strong on that. Oh yeah. So these designs are really just, should repeat the question so that anyone on the mic can hear. What these designs are on the screen here are general organizational view of how a company works, and this is just this is how Microsoft works, how Amazon, Google, and Oracle. It's from one of our slides, and it's really just this is the actual nature of what it's like working at these companies. We have to map what it's like working at our company. Once you understand how our company works.
Oh yeah, I figured it out. The Oracle one's true. The largest person in the legal team. Legal team and the engineering. You ever done with Oracle? Their legal team is very large because they're very notorious with a license.
Yeah.
Apple, everything involved in that.
Well, on Amazon, they're two separate.
All word comes from the top, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So Thor, his idea was that we don't know what we don't know. We should always approach everything as a hypothesis. We need to validate our ideas with the smallest possible test, because if we don't, we're just guessing. And by the time it gets out to the users, if we're guessing, it's way too late already to pull it back and actually make a viable hypothesis on it. Currently, he's at a company he created called Alpha. It's the minimum viable test to validate an idea. This talk was actually, I don't do it justice here, but this talk was really interesting for me because it was a shift from saying that we're working with a lot of enterprises and realizing that we need the structure, but the way that a lot of these processes are going, we need to be lean. So there's a contrasting of ideas that how do we fit all of this together when we've got conflicting ideas in both ways. This actually is what led to this talk specifically. So continuing, Drew Bradwell, he did a talk on how do we implement design systems in our workplace. And oftentimes we see design systems as identity patterns or visual patterns that we can use and reuse across our system. The atomic design principles, which is we start with the tiniest component and bring that up to the larger size components, and then all of a sudden we have templates and pages. I mean, that doesn't do the terminology justice, but it's generally, we start small and reuse those components and build something. What it also does is actually, it creates a baseline for us to communicate from. That it is a location where we collaborate and actually build alignment for inside of our companies at the enterprise level. Build your baseline of what you could actually build KPIs into your components so that you can gauge how well they're doing in the long run. And then you can figure out which pieces are failing, which ones are working. And across the board, you can now do a multivariate test on which components are actually working. And then with Raina, she has an awesome way of facilitating things because she actually gets you up and walking around the room in a way that's not just sitting at your desk and just writing something down. It's integrating the kinetic with the thinking and getting people to go to the physical, gets into the psychology of research and how you can actually get people to think more loosely. But I mean, the talk itself is generally about generative, exploratory, foundational, and evaluative types of research. we need to design our interactions with our users within our research in a way that actually brings out new ways of discovery. We can't just go down and say user test or qualitative data, say, hey, how does this work for you? We can actually design this thing so that we're either generating new ideas, exploring the foundational, what is the core current state, or evaluative. Okay, we created this thing, how are we going to actually use it? And so this talk was awesome. It was really exciting. It was a lot of fun to really learn what the industry is doing. A lot of these people are thought leaders in this industry. And so I have a lot of informational resources now. But if you paid attention, we're looking at how do we build binary alignment with these frameworks while we're trying to stay lean, while we're trying to create these super minimal tests, but we want to create a roadmap. I mean, these are all conflicting ideas, so how do we implement these where we work? It's really, it always goes back to it depends, right? And so this was a primary concern. I mean, we got all these great tools now. What are we going to do with them? Either we're truly motivated and try to implement it and fail miserably, potentially, or yeah, or I mean, we can go back to our workplace and go back with the status quo and say, okay, this is what we can do. It is what it is, and we'll try to get there someday. So part 2 of this thing is how to implement what you learn. For me, it's my opinion. I mean, take it or leave it as you will. I've added a disclaimer just to make sure. We are in information age, and we need to categorize what we learn, or else we're going to lose it. And if the beginning parts interest you a lot more, I've actually created a Google site that is linked to this thing. I'll share this thing with you guys. It just documents a little more in depth of what I learned at the front conference. It's on the SDG site. And this is what helps me, whether it helps you or not. It is what it is. It is advice. Take it as you need it and toss away the rest. It's just the nature of advice. So who am I? That's to be determined if I'm actually the person to tell you guys how to do this or not. And it's probably a no, and that's okay. But over the last 8 years, I've been professionally doing a lot of different things. And so this highlights a few of the different things that I've done. My main focus has been design, development, marketing, strategic branding, and really whatever else anyone will let me play with. Whatever companies I get to, I just ask if I can play with it. People are brave enough to share with me and let me play with it. So technically, in the past, I've been a full stack developer and a full stack UX designer, loosely, but that technically means I'm a mythical beast of modern lore. But more realistically, I'm just a dude trying to make ends meet. I've grown an unnatural curiosity to find how systems and systems come together, which puts me in strange predicaments. Right now I'm working 80-hour weeks. It's a lot of fun. But I really just like learning. So because of where I've been sitting near professionals and I ask questions, I try to figure out what they're doing, and I try to understand what their systems are. And because of that, that's what's actually led me to a lot of these different areas of specialization, or can't say it's specialization because I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But trying to consolidate all of these ideas into one system to become kind of my main goal. As a high-level overview of what goes on in my head, I've kind of broken it down to a very high-level overview. This breaks down into all kinds of different tree structures, lots of different nodes. Basically what this thing does are these three questions. Where are we currently at? What is the problem we're trying to solve? How are we going to solve that problem? I mean, it's straightforward, it's boring, yes. But it leads into a lot deeper questioning for me. First of all, we have to understand where we're currently at. I mean, we've got resources to do all kinds of business planning and all kinds of user mapping and trying to understand what the landscape of our work looks like. That, where do we start? And so for me, I mean, it breaks down to we need to understand what we're doing internally, what we're doing externally, and just give visibility to the current state. That is, internally, we're just doing a business process diagram, sitting down with the different groups of people that are working at business, and just figuring out what they do. I'm not actually going with UML or activity diagrams or process flow diagrams or all kinds of different frameworks I can use, but I'm just sitting down and saying, okay, this is you. Someone comes to you, what do you do? That is, for me, a business process diagram. I have a lot more actual ways to do that, but this, for me, it has to be informal so that even the user can, other person is not informed on the different types of diagramming tools can implement this. And then external experience mapping. Service blueprints are another term for it. And I use a lot of terms very loosely. So if I got terms wrong, feel free to let me know. It's better if I correct it, if I correct myself in that sense. So we map the internal, we map the external, and that is our current state. From there, we try to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve. And I mean, we got all kinds of things that people are coming to us for. What is the actual problem we're trying to solve? Notice when I'm trying to get a let's build X, we're trying to actually solve something that someone's having a pain point. And actually, this breaks down further for me as well into what are they doing for survival? What are they doing for infrastructure improvements? And what are they doing for R&D? Because if they're not doing anything for survival, they're eventually going to run out of resources in the business way. And not all of this work that we do will be for naught. If they're not doing any infrastructure improvements, then we're wasting a lot of time and money, and we're not actually getting anything done. And so all these infrastructure improvements end up paying for themselves for the most part. And then in R&D, if we're not growing, we're falling behind, and it's an opportunity for anyone else to pick up where we left off. And so those three items give you kind of, if we're solving a problem, we've got to solve a problem. It's actually meaningful to people. I mean, sometimes features are great, but they solve one manager's problems typically. So dig a little deeper. And where's that at? The big question, essentially the reason why we're all, or this talk has gone much longer than the initial, this is what I've gone through. Once we've isolated what the problem is, we have a huge potential amount of ways to solve the problem. But generally, the problem is social and functional to somebody. And that kind of gives you a visibility on, yeah, it's different to every person. And oftentimes, because of that, I have to go in and talk with both the stakeholders, the users, and the implementers. The implementers, they have a lot of voice, but they feel slighted by their inability to actually have a voice. So it is much more than just a feature. It is collaboration. And oftentimes we forget that companies are actually people. We think of companies as conglomerates or big brains in the sky, but we're just people. Doesn't matter how big you get, we're people. And so we've got all these great frameworks that you could work off of to implement an idea. This is just a sprinkling of what could possibly be implemented at different businesses, but which one do you choose? And so I've actually sat down, like this conference, I learned a lot from the speakers, but more so I've learned from the people that I was sitting next to. I actually enjoyed speaking with the people next to me more than the concept that speakers are talking about, because really I started to realize that they all have the same problems, and that's communication within the teams. And so I did ask them, based on popular opinion, how are you guys solving your problems? How are you solving issues with having separate teams that can't communicate? We're doing with Scrum and Agile, where we have different distributed hubs of people that are solving different products. But all of a sudden, these products are different group, almost different companies within the same company. And so, through that, how are you solving that? And I've had probably 13, 14 different conversations now. And the biggest response I've gotten is that they're running off of intuition, which is great if you're experienced and you know exactly what's doing and you know who your customers are. And I mean, these are all the excuses that we tell ourselves because we know, right? And so intuition is great, but I subscribe to kind of a scientific approach to UX work or product design or development in itself. And so really, how are we going to solve that problem? And a big old cop-out, it depends. Yeah.
Great.
But generally, because we now map, if we follow the story so far, we've mapped the current state. We know where our companies are at. We know who our users are. We know what our brand is. We know a lot more about the process that we have in place. And we know more about our users. So this is the landscape that we need to work with. This is everything that we can work with. And now with the lens of survival infrastructure and research, we now have constraints that we can work around. If we never figure out what our constraints are, we can go blue sky and any executive with a loosey-goosey idea that's going to change the industry, they win. And it's not a bad thing because they've gotten to where they are now. But let's help guide them to what the possibilities actually are within their current resource constraints. And so generally with all the information that we've been given, I mean, we've had a lot of good talks, and I'm not doubting any of the speakers at all. Their talks were really, really useful. To get to where they are, we need to build scaffolding to get to us to a point where we can actually handle what's being done. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, the entire talk, all the slides were Comic Sans and how my people were doing.
What did you feel like was the very most important thing to change how you do?
I have to simplify the way that I communicate. I mean, I've kind of shopped it around quite a bit, but I have a lot of frameworks and structures that I use to break down a lot of, or that I believe I can use to break down a lot of complex ideas. But it's way too complex for anyone to understand. So doing hands-on material and simplifying ideas down to infographics, or just at its core, simplifying. The better I can communicate what I'm doing, the better we can communicate how we work together.
Thank you.
Do you recommend this to other people in your situation, and how how do you sell that to them? I think is my biggest question. If I was semi-interested in this, what would you tell me? Why would I want to go there? What am I going to, I mean, if I'm on the fence, what good is it going to do me in my career?
Listening is never bad. Listening to the people that are asking you to do something. Oh, question for the mic. The question was, how will this help me to further my career? Is that roughly it?
Yeah.
Okay. Listening is never a bad thing. Oftentimes when we listen, we have preconceived notions. Building that current state from this, or getting some way to build that current state, gets you into a mindset of saying, my ideas were great and actually matter until I understand what the landscape of resources I currently have are. And from there, I can actually start to build. If I'm just going out there and using everything that's worked for me in the past, I mean, sometimes we're a startup and we don't have the resources to build the entire enterprise architect model. So where do we start? We start with our current resources. I think everyone can learn from that one. In those 13 conversations that I've had, it's been a matter of we want to do X, but we don't know how to get there. Did that answer it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it cost? The front conference cost?
STG covered it, so it was about $1,200. So yeah, STG is a great company.
Still back.
Yeah. Yeah, generally it's just an opportunity to actually apply this at a larger scale. And that's really the reason why I decided to make that leap. Testing the idea out on executive size, huh? Yeah.
You said you go more out talking to people next to you, like speakers, but you didn't want to say anything negative about the speakers.
So
I'm sort of thinking maybe I don't need to go. I couldn't fit it in my schedule this time. But it sounds like it's not the best thing if it's just collaborative together.
I'm going to say collaborating is always good. You always get that one-on-one conversation, and that's always so much more powerful than anything else you can do. But the conference itself, the workshops that they had, they are definitely valuable. The reason why I had more fun talking to the people that were next to me was because I'm actually interested in the current state of the industry. I want to understand what problems the industry is having as a whole. And as a speaker, you speak to what best practices are. But when you speak to people, you understand when the rubber hits the road, what are they dealing with. So that's what I was more interested in. It's just perspective and scope of what you're looking for. Anything else? Hey.
Thanks.